Going off the grid feels like freedom. It's raw, untamed, and thrilling. Nature at its most honest. But wilderness doesn't always play fair. Some adventures turn deadly, and not because people were careless. In this video, 5 real-life outdoor trips end in the most tragic, brutal ways imaginable. Sudden, chilling, and irreversible. These are the 5 worst deaths in the wild. Yosemite National Park. The mysterious death of Evelyn Roseman. There's something magnetic about Yosemite. The towering granite cliffs, the mist cascading off the falls, the feeling that time just pauses. That's the world Evelyn Roseman knew well. She wasn't just a visitor. Yosemite was home turf. At 24, she'd worked in the park as a masseuse during the tourist season and spent countless hours hiking alone, getting lost in the rhythm of nature. Independent, free-spirited, unafraid. But in October 1968, that independence met a disturbing end. She went for a solo hike. That wasn't unusual. What was unusual was what came after. 3 days passed with no sign of her. Then, near the base of Nevada Fall, where water thunders down nearly 600 feet, a group of hikers found her lifeless body, 200 feet downstream from the main drop. Theories came in fast. Maybe she slipped. Maybe the river pulled her over. But none of that made sense. The river wasn't roaring that day. It was calm, with low flow. And if she'd fallen, her body should have been found directly beneath the falls. But it wasn't. It was farther downstream, in a position that didn't match up with a natural fall. And the condition of her clothes raised even more red flags. Her corduroy pants were pulled down to her ankles. Her sweater was over her head. She wasn't wearing undergarments. A second black sweater was found nearby. Her purse, untouched and still full of her belongings, sat neatly on a footbridge above the falls, a bridge far from where her body was discovered. The details turned from tragic to disturbing. The autopsy revealed a massive head injury, consistent with a fall from great height. But what baffled investigators was the strange spread of the injuries. Pieces of brain tissue had been found 50 feet closer to the center of the waterfall, suggesting her body had been repositioned. Every single bone in her body was broken, but her skin barely damaged. Even her clothes were largely intact. That's not how falls from that height usually work. It was as if someone had staged the scene after doing something terrible. The final confirmation came from a case review, evidence of post-mortem sexual assault, which meant one thing. This wasn't just a tragic accident. It was a crime, a brutal, calculated one. And yet, no arrest was made, no charges filed. The FBI got involved, but their files? Sealed. Local authorities hinted at a possible inquest, and then silence. No public explanation, no follow-up, nothing. Just unanswered questions and a haunting gap in justice. Over the years, theories swirled. One paranormal speaker even suggested a cryptid, but that idea was quickly shut down. The clues pointed to something much darker, much more human. Evelyn had once worked as a topless waitress and masseuse, details that may have shaped the way her case was handled in 1968. Disregarded, pushed aside. It's been over 50 years, and still, no name, no face, no confession. Just a young woman whose love of the outdoors led her into the hands of someone who took everything. The woods at Yosemite may echo with the sound of water crashing down, but one name still lingers beneath the roar. Evelyn Roseman, the Cowan family, a vanishing in the Rogue River wilderness. There's a kind of silence in the woods that doesn't bring peace. It brings dread. That was the silence surrounding the disappearance of the Cowan family in Oregon's Rogue River Siskiyou National Forest back in 1974. Richard Cowan, 28, was a logging truck driver who had planned a quiet weekend at home. When his truck broke down, he shifted gears and headed into the mountains with his wife Belinda, 22, their son David, 5, their baby daughter Melissa, and their dog, Droopy. Their destination, Carberry Creek. On the morning of September 1st, Richard and David were seen at a general store buying milk. It was the last time anyone saw them alive. When the family failed to show up for dinner that night, Belinda's mother drove to their campsite. What she found was chilling. The truck was parked neatly. The picnic table was set up. Milk still cold. Belinda's purse, the baby's diaper bag, even Richard's wallet, all left behind. Only their swimsuits were missing. The next morning, Droopy was found miles away at the general store. Dirty, alone, but alive. A full-scale search followed. Helicopters, police, volunteers, even the National Guard combed over 25 square miles, but the forest gave nothing back. 7 months later, two gold prospectors discovered a shallow cave just 7 miles from camp. Inside were the decomposed remains of Belinda, David, and Melissa. Richard was found tied to a tree just outside. Autopsies showed Belinda and David had been shot. Melissa had been beaten. Richard's cause of death couldn't be determined. Oddly, that same cave had already been searched, which suggested one terrifying possibility. The bodies had been moved later. Authorities eyed Dwayne Lee Little, a violent felon known to be in the area. But no charges were ever filed. No justice was served. The Cowans were gone, and their killer still unknown. Makaleha Falls, Hawaii, the tragic fall of Gianna Buzzetta. Some places feel almost sacred, untouched, lush, and alive in a way that makes the rest of the world feel distant. Kauai's Makaleha Falls is exactly that. Hidden deep within Hawaii's dense jungle, it's the kind of place that feels like a reward to reach, but it's also the kind of place where one misstep can change everything. In March of 2025, it did. Gianna Buzzetta wasn't just passing through. This hike had been on her dream list for years. At 26, she was already a rising star in the culinary world, working as the executive pastry chef at June et Jolie, a Michelin-starred restaurant in Carlsbad, California. Her colleagues saw her as a quiet powerhouse, humble, intensely focused, and deeply kind. That day, she was hiking with her boyfriend, Connor Quinton. The two stood together in a pool at the base of the falls, surrounded by the calm hum of the jungle. Then, out of nowhere, came a sharp crack. High above them, a massive boulder tore loose and crashed downward, striking Gianna in the head. She fell into the water. Connor pulled her out. She was still breathing but unresponsive. With no cell signal and no time to lose, he ran for help. For over 3 miles, through brutal terrain, he pushed forward. Emergency crews responded quickly. Gianna was airlifted to a hospital in Honolulu. Her parents made it to her side. She passed away the next day. The shock was immediate and deep. At her restaurant, the grief was described as paralyzing. More than a co-worker, she was family. A fundraiser to support her loved ones raised tens of thousands in days. Gianna's story is a reminder of how fragile even the most beautiful moments can be, and how much light one person can bring into the world. The Pyrenees Mountains, the disappearance of Esther Dingley. High in the Pyrenees, where jagged peaks mark the border between France and Spain, solitude doesn't feel lonely. It feels intentional. That was exactly what drew Esther Dingley, a 37-year-old British adventurer, back again and again. With her partner Dan Colgate, she had spent years exploring Europe in a camper van, documenting their off-grid lifestyle on a travel blog. But in November 2020, she chose to go it alone. On November 22nd, she summited Pic de Sauvegarde, sent Dan a quick selfie, and shared a 90-second video call. That was the last time anyone heard from her. She planned to stay the night at a remote mountain shelter and loop back into Spain the next day. But 3 days later, Dan reported her missing. What followed was a massive joint search effort. Helicopters, drones, alpine rescue teams, every inch of the surrounding 700 square miles was combed. Still, nothing. As winter set in, the official search was suspended, but Dan continued alone. Then, in July 2021, hikers found a human skull fragment near Port de la Glaire. DNA confirmed it was Esther. A few weeks later, Dan found her body just 400 meters below a summit. Her phone, shoes, and backpack were nearby. Her yellow tent, gone. The autopsy confirmed what many feared: a fatal fall from a rocky ridge. Her spikes for ice traction were packed, but unused. It wasn't neglect. It was just the mountains, unrelenting. There was no foul play, just nature at its harshest. Esther had prepared. She knew the risks, and yet she chose to walk those trails anyway. Her journey wasn't about recklessness. It was about living fully. Her story is one of courage, passion, and the sobering reality that even the most careful adventurers are never truly in control out there. Purgatory Chasm, the sudden loss of Carolyn Sanger. The name alone is ominous. Purgatory Chasm, a place carved from rock and silence, full of narrow trails, sudden drops, and unforgiving ledges. It's the kind of place that draws in adventure seekers, but demands caution at every step. On April 23, 2025, 49-year-old Carolyn Carey Sanger arrived there with her 3 children and her brother. It was meant to be a casual afternoon hike, time in nature, away from the noise. Carey was someone who lived and breathed wellness. A former oncology nurse turned massage therapist and Reiki healer, She had recently opened her own studio, Balanced Body, in Topsfield, Massachusetts. This hike was supposed to be a break, a breath of fresh air in every sense. But at 1:45 p.m., everything changed. A call came in to Sutton Police. A woman had fallen between 50 and 75 feet into the chasm. That woman was Carrie. The terrain at Purgatory Chasm is deceptive. What looks like a trail can quickly become a cliff. When rescue teams arrived, they found bystanders already doing everything they could, some of them with medical training, having witnessed the fall themselves. But the injuries were too severe. Carrie was pronounced dead at the scene. Her 3 children had seen it happen. In the moments that followed, park rangers and state police worked quickly, but there was no undoing what had already occurred. Investigators confirmed it was an accident, a simple misstep, a trip. No health issue, no foul play, just one wrong move on treacherous ground. The local community reeled. Carrie wasn't just a mother of 4. She was a light. Her clients trusted her during their most vulnerable moments. Her friends described her as radiant. Her husband, Michael, an Iraq war veteran, called her his anchor. They had been preparing to celebrate their 20th wedding anniversary. Within days, a GoFundMe campaign raised over $100,000 to support the family. But more than the money, it was the flood of messages that painted the full picture. Carrie had been a healer, a nurturer, a guide. Her presence lingered long after her voice had gone quiet. At Purgatory Chasm, beauty and danger live side by side. Carrie spent her final moments surrounded by the people she loved, in a place she found joy. And though her life ended there, the impact she made rippled far beyond the cliffs. If this video moved you, share it. Help keep these stories alive. And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life documentaries that explore the most haunting, human moments caught in nature's grip. Hit the like button if you want to see part 3, and let us know which story stayed with you most in the comments below. Stay aware, stay safe, and respect the wild.